So our special guest on today's podcast is Jaimen Fraser. Now, Jaimen is a life coach who deals specifically with insecurities. So you might think to yourself, Greg, I haven't got any insecurities. I don't need to listen to this. Actually, I think when you do listen to this episode, it will probably uncover some things that we all have issues with. And maybe that comes from childhood, as in, I'm not clever enough, I'm not going to be good enough for this. All of these sort of things can start playing out in your business if we allow these things to overtake us. So Jaimen talks about getting right back to the root cause and a 7-step framework on how you can overcome these securities in your adult life. I think you're going to find this absolutely fascinating. So let's dive in. Jaimen, really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, mate. So we're going to dive in and really get into the depths of this subject, which is going to be so interesting for my listeners. So first of all, Jaimen, do you just want to introduce yourself to our listeners? What's your background? What do you do?
Sure. So I'm Jaimen. I'm the founder of the Insecurity project. I specialize in working with ambitious midlifers who've achieved all kinds of success in periods of their life, but haven't really done the work around their own narrative, and now it's in the way. So I help those kind of people solve the insecurity problem. And most people don't think it's a solvable problem to start with. They think it's just universal and the best you can do is manage it. So I've kind of devoted my best thinking to deconstructing insecurity and creating a model around how it gets solved.
Fantastic. Okay. So I presume you haven't always been doing coaching, Jaimen. How did you get into this? What was your path into getting into life
Yeah,
coaching?
absolutely. So my background, I was the church pastor. I grew up in the church. My parents were very Christian and I loved the way that they modeled their faith. It made sense to me. I was the youth pastor in my church growing up, and then thought that it's what I wanted to do with my life, was to help people grow in their faith. And so I went and did a degree in theology and got given the leadership of the church that I grew up in when I was 23, which I just thought that wasn't going to work. When the leadership decided I was the guy, I just imagined everyone was going to leave the church. But everyone thought that I was in fact capable of doing that, and so that was 10 years of being pastor. Very meaningful. The curiosity though for me was, as pastor, you were invited into people's world all the time to talk about the things that matter, talk about change and growth, and I was fascinated by how ineffective those conversations were and how little change I saw. And it seemed that the typical pattern was that Christians would want to outsource responsibility for change onto God. They were often consciously or unconsciously hoping for a miracle, that God was going to come through and save their marriage, get their kids on the right path, sort out their finances, fix their health. And so the idea of personal responsibility and self-awareness always felt too secular, like it didn't belong. And I always thought it belonged. So my curiosity just was really piqued when a guy mentoring me at the time introduced me to some coaching frames, and I just thought, this is a missing technology. Like, where has this been? This belongs. And the first, like, I dived headlong into that, went and did a diploma in coaching, and added that to my world, and that's kind of where I discovered Insecurity, because I felt such a resonance around this coaching methodology, and I thought, I really think I was a great pastor, but I think I could be an excellent coach. I think this is really where I fit. And I got all jacked up on Mountain Dew, as you do in these coaching environments. Everyone's going to change the world and make $1 million. And I just thought, wow, this is me and it's going to work. And I told my best friend and my wife that I was going to finally write the book that I'd always thought I would one day write. And now I had an idea and I was going to do it. And while I was away studying, wrote the first chapter of my first book. And at 11 o'clock at night, shut the lid on that laptop, and all this excitement and energy and passion turned to fear and dread. And, oh no, what have I done? Like, I've embarked on a process, and who am I again? And what gives me the right to say anything about this? And why will anyone listen to this? And I'd gone from this safe, known, comfortable world where I was liked and respected and had a platform and was kind of the top of the tree, to going out into the real world where no one cared and no one knew me and I had no credibility. And yet that was the space I was trying to play in. So I
Wow.
uncovered this mountain of insecurity that I didn't even know was there, and it terrified me. And I just thought then and there, like, is this a solvable problem? Like, I've never known this was there, but it is. And if I don't find a way out of this insecurity, I will shrink back to the safe world with my tail between my legs. And so that began my curiosity and a quest to go, has anyone solved this problem? And, thankfully I found a bunch of people that had, just no one had modeled it. So that was my work to reverse engineer it. How did you do that? What was the thing that made a difference? And so discovered a bunch of things that were essential to solving insecurity, and that then transformed my life and became the basis for then how I thought I could be most useful to others in the world, to go, okay, well, insecurity now makes sense to me, and people suffer greatly for not knowing they can fix this. So that's what I'm going to devote my energy to.
Fantastic. I love hearing stories of how coaches got into the business.
Mm,
And interestingly enough, you generally see patterns actually from good coaches. Oftentimes it's they've got this natural desire that they want to help people. And obviously that's been all the way through, isn't it? When you're in the church and now
yeah,
you
for
move over
sure.
to your coaching, you've got this desire that you just want to make people's lives better. So certainly resonate with that. And it's just fascinating, really, how when you actually get a taste of what coaching actually is. I remember my first taste of coaching was Tony Robbins, actually, and he got introduced to him out of nowhere, and I was just like, wow, it's like it just blows your mind that there is this thing as life coaching and improving performance and being your best self and all that. And that was my journey into it, actually. So I can certainly resonate with some of the things you're saying there. What I love too is that you've just said that you're now coaching on something that you particularly struggled with and found a solution to. And I always found that really fascinating because now it's got some real meaning behind it. So let's
Mm,
just explore that a little bit, talking about these insecurities then, because this is a big problem, and this will certainly be a problem with some of my listeners today that are listening to this, construction company owners, and they may well feel insecure about their ability to potentially grow a business and manage a business and all things around that. So you've just talked me through that a little bit. So you've written a few books of you on. Oh, I know you've written books, but you tell me about some of the books you've written around addressing insecurity and how you deal with that.
mm. Yeah, well, against the advice of my business coach at the time, 7 or 8 years ago, I decided to brand myself the Insecurity Project. And he said, oh, you can't do that. People are insecure about being insecure. Like, it's the thing no one wants to talk about, and everyone's pretending isn't true. So, but I just thought, oh man, how could I not? Like, I have a real engineering bent to the way that I think and the way I see the world, and I love structure. And the moment you can say structure, you can deconstruct and rebuild. So the book that I've written is called Unhindered: The 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity. And it just tries to be very pragmatic and structured about what appears to be messy and mysterious and weird and untouchable. And, fear often consumes us because it goes unexamined. So what happens if you turn the light on and see what is this thing that you are afraid of? I love Yoda's wisdom: named must your fear be, before banish it you can. So most people have this level of abstraction about what it is that agitates them that is so obscure that it can only become a monster. So the practice of um, being clear, what do you mean when you say you are afraid? Afraid of what? Would it, is there any logic to this fear? Does this fear stack up? Where did this fear come from? And so just that beginning point, moving insecurity into the realm of solvable problem by discovering what it really is, it's certainly a very transformational experience. Um,
Yeah. So what are people currently doing then if they're not aware that they need to address the insecurity first? What's the route people are going down to try and solve their issues?
well, when I was writing this book, I started out on a mission to eradicate insecurity from the world. So that sounded like the best language and really altruistic. But if you hear someone's on a mission, you're like, oh no, here we go. Like, they're going to be annoying about this. And I had this thought about the value of insecurity, which was surprising to me because I get invited to talk to young people about insecurity all the time. Teachers have me come into schools. Parents are excited. Teachers are excited. But do you know who's not excited to have me talk about insecurity? Yeah, the 17 and 18-year-olds. They're little shits. They're not ready for wisdom. And And the fascinating thing was insecurity is often still working for them. So I'm sure people can relate to this idea that some of our biggest motivation comes from proving people wrong. So someone said, you'll never do that. You can't do that. You're not good enough. And it's like, right, I'll show you. And it's like rocket fuel. It's performance enhancing drugs that, drive you further than you would have ever gone before, all out of this aggressive energy to prove that you're not who someone said you were. So it's all useful. And I thought there's no point taking that away from people until it's run its course, because it's going to run its course. And that time that you stand on the mountain and go, look, I can do it. And you're looking around at all the people who are celebrating, and the people who told you couldn't do it, like they forgot that they even said that to you in the first place. And they actually don't care. No one actually cares. So
Yeah.
it's such a shallow victory, and you've burnt yourself out in the process. And it's such a toxic way to be a human. And so I just kind of talk to people midlife when they're exhausted and they're ready to consider that perhaps there's a way of reviewing this. So, but it's rare that people stop for breath because they get so invested in an identity around proving and defending. And it's the human condition, right? We want to be good. We're just afraid that we're not. So for fear of that not being good ever being confirmed, we run or we hide. So most people are really committed to their hideout, and it's an act of real courage and kindness to stop. But I watch what happens, and insecurity unresolved always leads to madness. So it doesn't go well if you don't find a way in the midlife season to review the narrative you're living out of and address these fears. Then it gets worse from here, and it's not a performance enhancing drug anymore. Now it's destabilizing you to the point of madness.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that a little bit, because I imagine a lot of people don't realize that they have a problem with this, or this insecurity. So what would be the warning signs? Like what sort of life would someone be living for them to then question, have I got an issue with this? Is this something I need to address?
Yeah, well, if you just did an audit of what gets your best energy, that's a fascinating place to start. And if you were to zoom out and just have a look at you being you and just see how much of your energy is devoted to proving and defending yourself. And if you're thinking you're trying to grow a business, you're trying to do something innovative, you're trying to solve important problems, and yet all your best energy is being directed to prove and defend, then that can't be a very efficient way to run a business, let alone to be a human.
Mm.
And let alone all the extra energy that gets wasted in worrying what others think of you. And just the obsession, the conversation reruns, the second guessing yourself, the rehashing embarrassments and failures, and always feeling like people are talking about you or have an opinion about you. And just then you procrastinate about important tasks so that that person doesn't not like you and that person doesn't talk about you. And it just, there's a bunch of inefficiency with energy that I would say becomes the most catastrophic thing for ambitious midlifers. People who are trying to do something meaningful are so compromised. And when you're young, you can get away with it, with inefficiencies. Midlife,
Mhm.
you can't be inefficient. Who are you kidding? You don't have extra energy to waste. So it's just extraordinary watching what happens when people eradicate that insecurity and then are free to bring their best energy to the things that matter most with nothing to prove and nothing to defend. Of course, not only are they better humans, but of course they're more effective at the things that are important to them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's imagine someone now that they're listening to this, they recognize that they've got an issue with insecurities. They are trying to prove themselves all the time and replaying things in their head, conversations, whatever else, which I guess we all do to a certain degree. But if it's a constant narrative that's going on, there's something that's not quite right there. So what would be the next steps? Let's imagine they want some help with this.
Mm.
Where would they go to look for some help? What should they do?
Yeah, well, like practice 5 in my model, like the 7 essential practices. Practice 5 is get help from someone who doesn't care about you. And that's pretty counterintuitive because you'd think you're going to need some kind, loving, caring person who's going to believe in you and support you to help you build self-esteem. But those people get in the way. So no one's coming to save you. Uh, you're going to need help, but someone who's not going to get in the way, someone who can hold a clean conversation. So I think at some point we all need the level of objectivity because we rehearse these stories and find evidence for what we think is true, and they become self-fulfilling prophecies. They take on a life of their own. And so they feel so concrete. So it's hard to get out of your own head. with enough distance to be able to look back in and dismantle them. So that happens somewhere along the line. But I would say the very first step is just this question. Okay, so what are you afraid of? And I would say 100% certainty is a bold claim. So let's say with almost 100% certainty, you won't know the answer to that question. You will not have given that question nearly enough attention. You might think you know, but I promise you, you do not know what you're running and hiding from. Because if you did, then you would be in the game of solving it. And it's profound because people think they're afraid of failure or rejection or some kind of that form of that, but they're not. No one is afraid of failing. They are afraid of the personal implications of failing. If I was to fail, what does that reveal about me? No one's afraid of being rejected. They're afraid of if they were to be rejected, what does that prove must be true about them? So when you really have a look at insecurity, we are most afraid of our own worst opinion of ourselves. We just don't want anyone to confirm it. And if you want to get even closer into the problem, you formed that opinion about yourself when you were less than 7. So
Wow.
the first time you got embarrassed, disappointed, scolded, excluded, you made sense of that against yourself. You personalized that experience negatively, and you decided the reason that happened was because of you. And so you accused yourself of having some deficiency, some inadequacy. And then you thought you were right. And the rest of your life has been trying to make sure no one else ever knows that that's true about you. So your whole world is built on the opinion of a scared child. That's the insecurity problem. So that's what you're afraid of. So just saying it like that goes, wow, that can't be impossible to solve then. Like, did that kid actually get it right? No, I don't think they would have. What child could have got it right? What child has the emotional intelligence and the objectivity to know who you really are in the context of your difficult moments as a kid?
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you say it like that, it almost seems to sound like every child, every person would have experienced something like that. Does that mean everyone's got these insecurities inside them, or are some people just reinforcing it more throughout their life by the way they're living and the way things are playing out? Why can some people potentially not have an issue with this and others do?
Great question. So insecurity is domain specific. So everyone universally, no one escapes their childhood without developing limiting beliefs. It's not possible. And the great thing is it's not desirable. If you're a parent, you actually wouldn't want to protect your child from getting confused about who they are. Because if you really want to understand the game, you'll see that the wound is the gift. The obstacle is the way. The fact that as an adult, you get the chance to go back into your childhood and bring your best skills to bear on yourself. That's actually how you become mature. There is no other way. If you had no work to do, how are you supposed to work out how to love, how to be wise, how to sift out truth from falsehood? You can't. So it's a gift. So no one escapes it. But people get very clever about building safety and hiding from insecurity. So it looks like they're fine, and maybe that's their experience. They build a world so well that then they're nowhere in danger of being found out. Take them out of that world, however, or if that world was to be taken from them, then yes, that insecurity all of a sudden blows up. And that's what I had at the onset of COVID. I had such an influx of people faced with their insecurity because their certainty left them overnight. All these safe worlds they built for themselves to protect themselves from being found out were gone, and now they were faced with their fear. So everyone's got it. If you haven't solved it, it doesn't automatically fix itself, but you can trick yourself and others by creating very clever strategies to hide.
That's really interesting. So when you started off originally, you said get help from someone that doesn't know you. Is that was the first step, was it?
It doesn't care about you more
Doesn't care about you.
specifically. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. So once they've done that, what else is part of this framework? This 7-step framework you said, wasn't it?
sure. So practice one is to step into the light, which means name your fear. So tell the truth. What are you afraid of? If you if you're using terms like the imposter syndrome, that's imprecise. That's not helping. You are distancing yourself from the opinion of a scared child. You're saying it's a syndrome. You're saying it's something that's happening to you. Like you're being vague about this. So that's not going to work. But the only people who solve this get very precise.
Hmm.
I love Jordan Peterson's rules for life. Rule 10: be precise with your speech, because things that go unnamed become monsters that consume you.
Hmm.
So that's where you start. From there, uh, you go, okay, great. So this is an opinion problem. Okay, well, I know why I've got this opinion, because do you know what? Like when I was 6 and I was playing soccer, and and I was having fun with my friends, and I wasn't that paying attention to the game, and the ball went through me to the goals. I got in the car. My dad so berated me. He was so upset that I let the team win. I didn't even know it was that important. It turns out it was very important. And he said some things to me that I've never forgotten. And from that
Hmm.
moment, I've always felt like, what's the point in trying? Because I'm weird, or I'm an embarrassment, or or I stuff things up. And so, yeah, I know why I've got these opinions about myself, because my dad said that thing to me. Or when I was
Mm.
at school, the teacher pulled me out and said, "You're stupid. You'll never amount to anything." Or, everyone's got these words spoken by others, and they think, it makes sense. That's why I'm insecure, because of what happened to me. It's misdirection. That's a trick.
Yeah.
That's not what created insecurity.
And
One of
is
my
that easy to?
all-time,
I was just say, is that
sorry.
easy to uncover? So I guess some people will have like a memory where they think, yeah, I really remember that specifically, that those words and how that happened to me. But um, maybe some don't. Do you think some have like hidden memories or suppressed memories? Like how would they uncover those sort of things as
Oh,
to get deep?
because the way our brain works, it's a pattern gathering machine. We have to create a map to live out of. And so, with 100% certainty, words that hurt are stored so precisely in 3D color, all the sounds, all the emotions, they are there pristinely. If you don't have any way of facing that, or you're afraid of that, then it's lovingly hidden under the stairs in a filing cabinet, guarded with some bodyguards, so you don't remember it. I got people all the time who say, "Oh, this is going to be hard for me, James, because I don't really remember my childhood. I kind of think I had a fine childhood. Yeah, it's not really there." Okay, sure. No, it's there, and it's still directing your whole world. Um, but practice too is this idea of responsibility, because I was going to say my all-time most gifted and recommended book is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't know if you've come across that,
No.
but he says, listen, you got to understand this. It's not the words spoken to you or about you that change your life. It's just the ones you agree with. So that's transformational, because it just means no one has the power to bless you or curse you without your permission.
Mm.
And it all of a sudden moves you from being an actor in the story to being the storyteller. Like, you've had the pen the whole bloody time. So it wasn't that dad said, you're an idiot. It was that when dad said that, you went, huh, think he's telling it. I think he's right. I am an idiot. Like, you signed off on it. So
Yeah.
all insecurity is built on the worst thing you decided was true about you. And that means you created this. So you've got the pen. You're the only one who can change this. So that really, again, it puts you at the center of the action, keeps this as a solvable problem.
Yeah.
And that's the only way this ever gets changed. While ever you're living as a victim in some way, like, oh, I wish my childhood was better. If only that didn't happen, you've missed the game.
Yeah. So that's
That's not
taking,
what actually changed your life.
yeah. So taking full ownership of I guess your part in it, even though you might have been young, but you're in control of how you've let that narrative go. So which then gives you the
Yeah,
control back to make the change.
that's right. And it's not to blame the child, because what child has the capacity to be wise enough and objective enough not to accuse themselves in those moments? So
Hmm.
there's no upset about it, but it's just, where did the action actually take place, to break through all the misdirection. And just because if you can see where the action took place, then, and you were the heart of the action, well, then you control all the levers. You are the one who can fix this as soon as you're ready.
Can I just quickly interrupt this podcast and ask you, please, for a favour? We're constantly trying to bring you the best value and the best specialist guests to come on this show. But the only way we can do that is if we start growing this channel. So could you please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? And we'd love it if you could give us a review. These reviews really help promote the algorithm and promote engagement, and it means that our guests can see that we've got a really successful show. I hear from you in the background that you're enjoying it, so please take 5 minutes to do this. It will really mean a lot to me and help the show going forwards. Yeah. How do you know if you've actually got the memory or the phrase that was said to you? You know, because I guess for some people it could be multiple things that are said. Is it literally like an aha moment for people where they go, that was it? You know, where does that come from?
So to be very pragmatic and structured about this, it's entirely testable. So behavior never lies. So we think we believe all kinds of things, but behavior is the end of the assembly line and the factor of our beliefs. So all you have to do is just observe dysfunctional behavior. Tell the truth. What are the things you do that you know are weird, you know are dysfunctional, you know is compensating, and then work your way backwards. So what must I believe about myself in order to behave like that? So an example of a client who that very question, how will I know? What are the words? What are the things I accuse myself of? What am I afraid of? And so she noticed this incessant, like this obsession with being seen to be smart. So always worrying, will I get this wrong? Like, can I answer this question? What if this comes out weird and people think I'm stupid? Like, if I'm not going to excel at this, I can't even dare go close to it. I can't afford to not achieve other than perfect, because then someone's going to think I'm stupid. And so she watched herself afraid of being seen to be stupid. And so the data's there to go, okay, well, when was the very first time you decided that you could be seen as stupid? And so she goes all the way back and realizes there was a first time. That wasn't the origin. And that's the fun of this. If you go back far enough, every child starts relaxed. They start with a complete awareness they're enough. And it's fine to be them because they're not making any transactions. They're not paying board. They're not paying, for food. They're not doing anything to contribute. And yet they're being loved and nurtured and looked after, and their dummy's being picked up when they squawk. So they go, look at this. It's okay to be me. I am more than enough. And then that very first time where they get embarrassed or they show up relaxed and it goes terribly wrong, like everyone's got that first experience. And so I think there is always one thing above everything else because there's a first time. And
Yeah.
And often there's a thing that you accuse yourself above everything else, which really is the worst thing you've ever thought about yourself. And it's all variations on a theme, right? It's all some kind of inadequacy. But for some, it's, I feel like I'm stupid. And for some, it's I'm weird. For some, I'm invisible or I'm worthless. For others, it's I'm bad. Like there's something really wrong with me. It's when you deconstruct it, you just say, wow, there is evidence. Your whole life has been about compensating and covering so that no one else ever knows you're stupid, or no one else ever thinks you're weird, or no one else would ever even consider that you're worthless. So all the evidence is there. It's just been compartmentalized and suppressed so you don't find it because you're scared. But if you get to the point in your life where it's killing you and you're like, oh my goodness, this insecurity, all my best energy, proving and defending myself, which is practice 3, by the way, to stack the pain. So it's no one solves this except from a place of pain. Like no one calls me and goes, Jaimen, my life's awesome. Can you help me solve insecurity? They go, Jaimen, I'm suffering. Like my marriage is falling apart. I'm in my head all the time. Like I've put on weight. I don't know how to be me. Like it's weird. And this is getting worse and I don't know what's wrong and I can't keep going on like this. Great. Well, you're going to need a big motivation to do what's always been impossible. Pain will do that for you. And if you tell the truth about the cost of unresolved insecurity, you will have all the motivation you need to go back into your childhood and review data that's previously been off limits.
Yeah, and that's proven, isn't it, about stacking the pain? Again, just it reminds me of something Tony Robbins taught.
He's
He
big
does
on
this
that.
process, doesn't he? I think the Dickens process he calls it, where he really starts stacking the pain in his events on something to create the change needed. If it feels painful enough, then you're going to go, that is it. I've hit, not maybe not hit rock bottom, but I'm done. I'm not going to accept this anymore, and now I'm
Exactly.
going to take control of it. So that's the principle behind that. So yeah, that's
Um,
fascinating.
and Tony is very good on the fact that that is only half the change process, the motivation, because he says if you just do pain stacking, you'll then only do enough to get out of pain. And then as soon as you're out of pain and feeling good, then all the motivation dries up. And then 6 months later, you're back to where you were. So he says, you must also be clear about what you do want. Don't just pay attention to what you
Mhm.
don't want. So this idea, and this is practice 4, you're going to have to develop a compelling vision for your life. Tell the truth about what you do want, what you've always wanted. What is the desire of your heart? If you get to the end of your life and you've never achieved this certain thing or follow this certain path and you're going to die with the music in you, it's going to be a waste. So both, pain and desire form the basis of enough motivation to see the job through. That's Big
Fascinating.
Tony's
Yeah, and when
contribution.
yeah, that's great. So thinking about that, when you're thinking about what you really want in life, again, I guess there's a bit of digging that needs to happen here, isn't it? Because people are just living their lives. They're just going day to day, aren't they? Working hard. Sometimes we don't actually stop and think, what am I doing? What am I doing? Where am I going with this? What
Yeah,
do I
that's
want
right.
things to look like later on in 20 years? So how do you help people uncover that, what they really
Mm.
want?
So you're right. It sounds like such a simple question. I think it's the hardest question that exists, especially when there's unresolved insecurity, because you're like, hang on, it's dangerous to put your head up and say, I want this, because then that sets you up for failure and rejection and disappointment. And others are going to
Mm,
think you're crazy. And what if it doesn't work? And everyone's looking at you. So it's just safer to let others tell you what you should want and then complain about it. But I just go, well, the desire is human, though. So if you tell the truth, your heart does want what it wants. And
mhm,
so it's there. Um, so the way that I help people uncover that is I do the silly ideas only exercise. And I think it's the only way in because it takes the pressure off. So the way that I do this, and it's an exercise I've done maybe 2 or 3 times a week for at least the last 10 years. So I get like I love a nice journal. So I get a blank page and a nice pen. So just the kinesthetic of a nice thick white
mm,
clean page and a nice pen that writes itself. This is not a discipline. This is a ritual. And then I write on the page, hey, Jamin, if you could have anything, well, what anything would you want? And the rules of the game are silly ideas only. So no accountability and no responsibility for anything you write on that page. Swing away. Because you're going to go, you write the first thing down and go, well, I mean, that's bloody silly. I can't have that. Yeah, exactly. That's the name of the game. You can't get it wrong. So swing away, swing away, swing away. And the real fun of this exercise is that you will not be able to tell the difference between your silliest ideas and your most honest ideas the first time you write them down. But the cat's out of the
mm.
bag. You will witness yourself tell the truth in amongst a whole bunch of weird stuff. And if you keep playing this game, you will see patterns emerge and go, why does that thing keep coming up? What is it about that? And so when I look back over the last 12 years of my life, all the things, every single thing I'm most grateful for and I celebrate the most, all started out as silly ideas only. Like every single one of them were impractical, were improbable, were strange, but they were true. And if I hadn't found a way to de-escalate the pressure, because otherwise people go goals, right? Goals. What do I want, right? And it just like the pen starts shaking, and it's just this pressure that if you write something on the page, you're now accountable and responsible for whatever happens, and you got to go do it. And so it's too big a step. So that's the way in. And I like to gamify it, have some fun, and you can't help but get in touch with your own heart in that exercise.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds fantastic. So let's imagine now we've seen some patterns. We're starting to work out what we want. What's the next step?
So practice 5 is get help from someone who doesn't care. So I think that kind of sits above
Yeah.
all of this. But if you liken this to the hero's journey, which it very much is, um, the hero starts out as a weakling, says yes to the call to adventure, and is going to go face a monster. But the hero always meets the wisdom character. There's always a Gandalf, there's a Yoda, there's a Dumbledore, there's a Mr. Miyagi. And when you first meet the wisdom character, you think they're going to save the day, but they never do. That's not their role. They equip the hero and then they bugger off. They die, they disappear, they vanish. They are not there in the moment. And so I think that's the great challenge for therapists and counselors and psychologists, is not to confuse the world about who the hero is. And I watch them do it all
Hmm.
the time, because sometimes people go into that space because they love rescuing people, or they're hiding from their own dysfunction behind the desk, fixing other people so no one's looking at them, which is a horrible thing to do to someone. So to find someone who can hold a clean space for you, who doesn't have a vested interest, like, it's so much fun. When I get to coach someone, my very first job is to convince them I don't give a shit about them. And I say, I know I look like a guy who cares, but you cannot confuse me for someone who gives a shit. I'll forget about you. I won't lose any sleep over you. You'll tell me sad stories that I won't cry, because it's not my life, right? And I'm not another person who needs you to do something you don't want to do. Uh, that's not me. But if you tell me what you want, oh, sure, I'll give you everything I've got to help you get that. And I know the way, by the way, but you've got to want it. So just treat
Hmm.
people like adults, treat people as they are already responsible for creating this mess, and empower them and remove. So I think it's such a difficult step, but a very crucial one. Because then practice
Yeah.
6 is be the hero. So eventually, you are going to have to confront that accusation. So you're afraid that you're not stupid. You realize, you're afraid to be found out as stupid. You realize you decided you were stupid when you were 4, when you're in the car with your dad. You're going to have to go back there and review the data. You're going to have to go find the evidence. And it could be true, right? Like, maybe the kid got it right. Maybe you are worthless. Maybe you are weird. Maybe you are stupid. Maybe there is inadequacy. Could be something wrong with you. There's only one way to find out. You're gonna go have to have a look. And that's the hero, right? Because the hero gets to a stage where they either die or they come out the other side reborn. Like, they're going into the cave. The
Mm.
treasure you seek is in the cave you fear. And they know they can't go home. And so it's a terrible moment, but it's so predictable and so structured. There is no escape. You will have to decide what is true once and for all. And you've built up all this evidence that you are stupid, but it's all a misunderstanding. And no one can tell you that because you've lived your own life, but you're going to have to go be the hero and work it out. Um, and
Right.
then to
And
complete the
what's the
process,
last?
sorry.
Yeah. What's step 7?
Well, step 7 is to rewrite the story. So you've got the pen, eventually having deconstructed the old story that you're not stupid. Well, then who are you? Like, what is true? What is a new narrative to actually build a life upon? And I find people, when they hear practice 7, they go, oh, yeah, I get it. Affirmations on my mirror, be kind to myself, be positive. Like, sure, don't let me stop you doing any of that. But if you don't deconstruct the old story first, then no amount of affirmations is ever going to touch the side, because as soon as you get stressed or anxious or triggered, that old story is going to come out and take over like it has every other day in your life. You must face the fear first, clear the slate, change your mind. Now you're free to use the pen. And then your work is, for a short period of time, to align yourself to the new narrative and agree with it until it's the default. And then you've established a new way of being you. That means you're now unhindered. You're now free to go into the world at your best where it matters most, with nothing to prove and defend. Um, until
Wow.
your world gets so big that you're saying yes, there's no barriers anymore. You're saying yes to things you would always say no to. That you then bang your head on the next insecurity that now has become apparent because you're getting so big. And then the same 7 practices that got you free last time get you free this time as well.
Wow. So you go again with something else. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Well, because people say
What?
to me, sorry, people say, so Jamin, surely you're insecure. And I say, no, I'm not. No, not at all. There is not a moment of energy spent directed protecting or defending myself at this current level of growth. However, I promise you, my world keeps getting bigger, and I will face the next subtle thing I said, that I was good enough for this, but not good enough for that. It's coming. Of course, it's coming. And I'll welcome it when it does, because it's evidence of growth, not regression. And I know when I get there, I know exactly how to deconstruct that story and write a better one, just as I have done at every other stage of growth. So, but at this current level, not a moment spent worrying about proving or defending what others think. I know what I think, and I'm very secure in me.
Yeah, I like that. So, and this goes back to what you said before. We're using the pain of the past actually as a teacher to help us grow going forward. So it's it's actually a blessing, isn't it? That sometimes the pain points really, fascinating. If someone does deal with a particular insecurity, they go through these steps, they're rewriting their story. Can it appear again? That same insecurity, or is that once it's deconstructed, it's
Right.
done, or
Mm.
or is it for some people it's pretty embedded, and they may have to keep revisiting the same thing.
That's a great question. So I had a psychologist I was interviewing on my podcast the other day, and I said, "Can we be healed?" And they said, "Well, no. Like the best we can do is to move toward health and have a clean scar. But we will always have the marks of our woundedness, and we'll carry that with us forever. And so it's always managing the things that have gone wrong." And I just said, I don't have any logic to sustain and support what you've said, because the wound is not what happened to us. The wound is what we decided the reason was that thing happened to us. So we are the ones wounding ourselves. No one has the power to ruin us. Otherwise, we're just victims of our world. If you've had good parents, you've got a good life. If you had terrible parents, you've got a messed up life. That's not how it works. So I go,
Mm.
this is very binary. I decided that I was stupid when I was 5. So that's either going to be true or it's going to be false. If I hedge my bets with it and go, oh, I need to build up confidence so I don't feel stupid, still unconsciously, I think it's true. I'm just trying to get further and further away from it. So to go back and completely go and sit with that, go back to that kid, have a look at all the data and go, it's not there. There is no evidence. A misunderstanding has been made. I disagree. That has never been true. Well, then you have changed that for good. Like it is there. It's not there anymore. How can you feel anxious and insecure if there's no structure for it to sit on? So this is not like, most people don't think like this, where I'm not trying to be different. I'm just trying to be logical and to think engineering in an engineering way about this. You must be able to solve this problem completely and then move on. So if a person experiences the same insecurity show up again, I just say you are being pressure tested. That's all this is. You've built a new
Mhm.
story for yourself, and it's like an engineer who builds a new engine. Wonderful that you can start it and it runs in the car park. Can this thing handle some heat? What happens when you get it out in the highway? Like, where are the weakest links on this thing? So it's wonderful that in the safety of your own study, in your journal, you've changed your mind about being stupid, but the world's coming for you, right? And no one knows you've changed your mind, and you've trained people to treat you. So you're going out into the real world, and it's not going to go well every day. You're going to get embarrassed. You're going to fail. You're going to fall. So, can you handle this new agreement under pressure, or will you crumble? Will you go back to what you always decided was true anyway? Will you betray yourself again? So, I just really important for people to know this is going to be tested, by the way. So, can you
Mm.
handle it? Are you going to hang on to your own storytelling, or will you betray yourself again? Because if you can handle that under heat, then this engine's now certified. It's ticked off on great. That's good. That engine works. So
Mm.
go use it, go flog it, go drive it fast. You're away.
Fantastic. It's been a fascinating conversation, Jamie, and really interesting, and went a route down that I wasn't expecting we'd go down actually.
That's
So
so cool.
really interesting. It was a really great conversation. So if someone wanted to learn a little bit more about this,
Hmm.
you've got a book out on this. Do you want to just give us the title again of the book and how people get more information on this?
Yeah, sure. So it's called Unhindered. And I think that's the prize, to be able to show up unhindered by doubt, fear, and insecurity, your best energy directed toward growth. So Unhindered, the 7 essential practices for overcoming insecurity. Um, and if people are like unsure, I've got a couple of tests on my website. Find out, where is insecurity costing you the most in your life. There'll be 5 key indicators to measure against. And in your business, like, would you be willing to have a look at where doubts, fears, and insecurities are actually robbing you in your business across 5 key indicators as well? So it's useful to get some optics on these things and accurately understand the cost of inaction and the cost of continuing on. So um, yeah, otherwise I've got 300 episodes on my Unhindered podcast. You can hear me coach other people around this and be a fly on the wall, because it's such a vulnerable subject. It's nice to be able to be vicarious about this and just watch someone else go in. So yeah, there's plenty of resources specific to overcoming insecurity as part of the Insecurity project.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we put all those links in the show notes. But Jaimen, can I just thank you so much for your time today, and what an interesting subject, and wish you all the best going forward.